Hello everyone, my name is Kiani Ottenwalder and today I'll be demonstrating how to conduct the lower body Y-balance test. The purpose of performing the Y-balance test is to assess the flexibility and balance of an individual. Furthermore, it screens for potential injuries and risk, as well as monitors the progress of rehabilitation. To begin with, you must gather all the materials required to set up the test. These materials include tape, cups, measuring tape or ruler, and a recording sheet. Then, to set up the actual test, you must place the tape on the floor in the shape of a Y as shown. Then place one cup on each line created towards the center. Then have the client stand in the center of the Y while standing on one leg. Then using the other leg, they will begin to push the cups down the lines as far as possible in 3 different directions. These directions consist of anterior, posteromedial, and posterolateral axis. Furthermore, the individual must stay balanced on one leg the entire time, and the heel cannot leave the floor while performing the test. Once the individual finishes one leg, they must switch to the other leg and repeat the process of pushing the cups down the axes. If the individual loses balance or the heel comes off the ground, then the test is invalid and you must start over again. Once the individual has finished pushing out all the cups on both legs, we will then take out a ruler and measure the distance that the cups were pushed and record the results on the recording sheet. Then allow the individual to rest for about 5 minutes and repeat the process 2 more times for a total of 3 trials. The results from this test can influence training decisions or injury prevention strategies for soccer because it shows that the athlete is less prone to injuries due to their high composite scoring on both legs. However, I did notice that the right leg was more dominant than the left leg, which could suggest that the athlete would benefit from more unilateral exercises that balance out the strength and flexibility differences between the 2 legs. Once all the data has been collected and recorded, we must then standardize the data. Standardizing the data is necessary when analyzing the results because it makes it easier to be able to compare the results when taking into account that people have different lengths of their limbs. Therefore, standardization of the data factors this into the scoring at the end of the test, making it more accurate. In order to standardize the data, we must add up all 3 reaches on one leg and divide it by 3 to get the absolute reach distance. Then we must divide the absolute reach distance by the length of the working limb and then multiply it by 100 to get the standardized results of the data. Some common errors to take into account when performing the Y-balance test consist of not allowing the individual to practice prior to beginning the test, not allowing the individual to rest the full 5 minutes in between rounds of the test, not having the proper testing environment, and not standardizing the data. When individuals are not allowed to properly warm up and practice, this makes them more likely to not be able to perform the test to the best of their abilities. Furthermore, if they are not taking the full 5 minutes of rest in between rounds, they are more likely to be too fatigued to continue the test properly. And lastly, not having a proper testing environment, such as an uneven or slippery surface, can impact the ability of the athlete to be able to balance and perform dynamic movements. Many factors can impact the results of the Y-balance test, such as the individual's muscular strength and endurance, especially if one limb is stronger than the other. This test requires an athlete to be able to hold themselves up on one leg while the other is actively trying to push the cups as far as possible in the 3 directions of the axis. So strength and endurance are vital to doing well. Furthermore, one's ability to be flexible and balanced greatly impacts the results during the assessment. If an individual lacks the range of motion in the lower extremities, then they will struggle more performing this assessment. Lastly, if an individual is coming back from a previous injury or if they are lacking confidence, it could impair their ability to perform the assessment well. While the Y-balance test is extremely useful for predicting the injury risk of athletes, there are some limitations that it possesses. For instance, the flexibility that is being tested for is only testing in 3 directions and not taking into consideration the flexibility required of the athlete's sport. Furthermore, the Y-balance test requires that the individual being tested on already has the ability to be able to stand on one leg while performing movements at the same time. Therefore, it requires that the individual already has the skills necessary to be able to complete the assessment. Ultimately speaking, it is not a test that would be useful for the general population due to the skills required to not even pass the assessment, but to complete the test to its entirety. There are many ways to improve the test performance. For instance, warming up with dynamic stretches, joint mobility, balancing exercises, core activation exercises, and plyometric warm-ups will be able to allow the individual to properly warm up prior to beginning the Y-balance test and ultimately assisting in bettering their score.